In Generation Zero's ongoing evolution, we see unique and mysterious locations appear quite regularly through the updates. And February's update brought more of these locations in the form of Bunker 666 and the changes to Saltolman. But we have one final location to talk about today: the mysterious tower in the mountains region. With damaged televisions scattered around it, relay beacon satellite dishes, and an incredibly perplexing scene of a destroyed apocalypse tick functioning as some sort of power source to a makeshift generator hooked up to a computer, this tower is definitely on the stranger side of things when it comes to set pieces we see scattered throughout Oostertorn. Today we'll be discussing the possibilities of this strange scene, some ties that we can make back to Himfjell Island, and as always, showing you dudes how to get here so you can see this location for yourselves and theorize with me on what this all could mean. So first things first, let's talk about the scene itself. We can find nestled inside the tower a strange tent with some sort of antenna sticking out of it. A fellow who passed away due to radiation exposure, and then the computer with a makeshift generator that I believe he was utilizing to broadcast some sort of message with due to all the relay dishes we can find around the tower. Then we can find a computer on the lower level near the strange tent, and one single active television with an advisory on its screen. So the real question here: what was the message that was intended to be broadcasted, and who was he trying to reach? For what the message was, only time will tell, but for who he was trying to reach, potentially I have a theory. And it's someone who I brought up in my video on Bunker 666, Veronica Nielsen. Around Veronica's trailer, we are able to find a whole bunch of scattered, destroyed televisions just like the tower. And also on those televisions, most of them have the exact same advisory on their screen. Now, Veronica is a very interesting character to talk about here in Generation Zero. She potentially was one of the closest people to Von Ulmer himself throughout his process of being transformed into Phoenix. And due to that, due to her inside information, she is one of the few people in this game that could potentially have some crazy, mind-bending answers to the plotline itself. I believe that this has something to do with Veronica because at her trailer we can find a wild broadcast array set up on the roof, and this has me thinking she was clearly seeking contact with someone or something out there beyond the resistance off of Björtenet. And was this potentially contact with the fellow that we find at this ruined tower? Or were they both seeking contact with some other force in the world of Generation Zero? There are a few possibilities if this is true. One side being the Russians that we attain contact with towards the end of the game, or the other being Von Ulmer himself. We as the character have a dialogue with Von Ulmer in the final moments of Generation Zero, and possibly these individuals were seeking the same dialogue themselves. I'm really hoping that we'll get a mission chain to tie this all together someday in the future. The potential mission chain that I could personally see for this whole endeavor would be us somehow reactivating that makeshift generator, maybe finding a fresh computer to hook up to it, and possibly establishing the comms that the fellow off at this ruined tower was trying to set up himself. This would make a lot of sense because this way you wouldn't need to have the Alpine Unrest DLC in order to make this mission still make sense and still be some sort of relevant factor to the players that haven't purchased the DLC. So now let's talk about how to reach this location. So you can find it off at 3893 1111 off in the mountains region. The way I like to reach this spot is starting off at St. Angris Church and just kind of heading out into the plains area just outside of the church itself. If you follow this road, this kind of dirt road up and along the path, you'll be able to find a side path that leads you off into the forest. Now, I wound up running into a couple hunters here, but usually you'll find some sort of machine spawned in this area, so it's just something for you guys to be aware of. just to be prepared to get jumped in the process of trying to make your way over here. After you're done dealing with whatever opposition stands in your way, you'll want to start making your way up this kind of zigzag path that you can see leading up into the mountain region here. This path is pretty easy to follow. It could get a little overgrown in certain areas, but following it is pretty simple as long as you get started on the path and pay a little bit of attention to your map and the coordinates that you're following. So you'll want to kind of head along this path until you reach a spot with a rather large pine tree just off on your right hand side, as you can see here. And what you'll want to do from this point is kind of just make a sharp right turn and just start heading straight off in that direction, climbing up the mountains and kind of ignoring the path from this point. Again, you'll be able to find various machine spawns in this area, so always be ready to deal with some sort of machines getting in your way. After you're done dealing with anything that's, again, trying to stop you from getting here, you'll want to kind of Skyrim your way up this hillside, and after that, you'll be able to find the tower pretty much in plain sight because it's standing in a small clearing from the trees here. So that's just kind of my route to approaching this, but there are a whole bunch of different routes you can take. So one of the other ways that you could get up to this tower is by climbing up the mountain near Baird Scapforad 116 and just kind of climbing up the mountain. This route is a little bit more difficult to take because there aren't many safe houses near Baird Scapforad, and climbing up the mountain that way just can be kind of time consuming. But the other way is starting off at Utern and then heading off into the forest. The only problem with Utern is there's no clear path to really follow. So I find my route is kind of just the easiest and most enjoyable path to actually take. Now, coming back around to this whole set piece, I really like this one. I think it's possibly one of my most favorite set pieces that I've found in the game so far. Mostly just due to the way it utilizes a lot of the technology that we see that is made by Phoenix. So I really like the way the tick is used as a power source because the Apocalypse machines use some sort of radiational nuclear kind of power to them. And that just kind of goes to show how much power this person was actually trying to utilize in order to make their broadcasts reach whoever they were trying to reach. And then alongside that, the utilization of the satellite dishes from the relay beacons is just a really creative approach to creating some sort of a kind of makeshift comms array out of the tools that you have in the world. That's one of my inner wishes for Generation Zero, is that we'll be able to see ourselves utilizing some of this crazy high-tech stuff for our own characters someday in the future. Because I think that that's one of the coolest things about Generation Zero are the machines and the technology used behind the machines. And I think that it would just be super awesome to see us be able to set up a location kind of like this, potentially if base building ever gets added to the game, where we could utilize various pieces of, say, a relay beacon to set up something for ourselves, or use various machinery or weapons from the machines in order to set up little establishments of our own. But there you guys go. There is the mysterious tower off in the mountains region. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. This is the last video that I'm going to be making on mysterious locations, as I don't believe that there are any more to find. But you guys can be sure that if there are, I'm going to be talking about them because I find this stuff absolutely way too cool to follow. So there is a developer live stream coming up later on this week, and hopefully we'll be getting some news and information about March's update in that live stream. And if we do get any sort of news and information, you dudes can be sure that I'm going to be covering that. Outside of that, I have one more thing to talk about from February's update that I think is really, really interesting. And then outside of that, I'm going to kind of jump back to a plan that I had for last month for making a video on the loot tables here in Generation Zero. So there's plenty of stuff to look forward to from me. But thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.